Welcome, everyone, to the ComedySportz Podcast with your host, Christine Rollo Capriolo, and today's special guest, fresh from Boston's Back Bay, Courtney Pong.
Hey, welcome back, everybody, to the ComedySportz Podcast. I'm Christine Rollo Capriolo. Very excited today. I have a fellow female comedian on the podcast. Everyone, please welcome Courtney Pong, all the way from Boston. Hi, Courtney.
Hi.
How are you today?
I'm so fantastic. I'm so glad I'm here.
I'm very glad to have you on the show. I really appreciate you taking some time to do this.
Oh, of course.
So I just kind of start right away with everybody asking where you were born and raised.
Oh, okay. Goodness. So I was born in San Jose, California, which is a deep part of my story in ComedySportz.
Okay.
But I was raised in a small town in Northern California called Modesto, but we don't talk about that too much. Modesto's not known for a ton of awesome things.
Okay. So no Modesto in the conversation. Okay.
No, we don't discuss it too much. Usually when I tell people I'm from Modesto, I get these like looks that are just like, oh, I understand.
Okay, so born and raised in San Jose. What did your parents do for a living?
My father worked in telecommunications.
Mm-hmm.
So he used to set up phone lines, and my mother left work to raise all three kids. So we have an older sister, and I've got a twin sister.
You have a twin sister?
I do.
Oh,
I
that's
do.
cool.
She's cooler than I am. It's very unfortunate.
So I'll talk to her next then. That'll be good.
Yes. I always tell people there are two of her or two of me, whichever you prefer.
Are you identical?
No, we're fraternal.
Okay.
The other day, somebody meant to ask me that question, and it came out. They said to me, "So, are you biological?" And I was like, "Nope, that's not what you wanted."
Nope, not the right one.
Yep.
So when you were a kid, what kind of kid were you? Were you like the class clown, funny kid, or how would you describe yourself?
You know, it's funny. So I later in years, like after I was out of college, probably even maybe 5 or 10 years ago, my parents ran into my fourth grade teacher in Costco, in my hometown. And they were like, "Oh, what are the girls up to? What's everybody up to?" My parents at the time said something like one of my career that I went to school for was public relations. And they were like, "Oh, she's in public relations."
Okay.
And my teacher was like, "Yeah, that makes sense." Just very matter of factly. She's like, "Yeah, Courtney was a talker." So my big thing was when I was growing up, I was very chatty. I loved talking. I don't know if I necessarily liked performing, but I was very my librarian also ran into my parents at Costco, and my librarian told my parents, she said, "I remember Courtney used to always ask for where were the joke books in the library. Every time we went to the library for the school library, I'd ask for joke books." Okay. And there were only 2. So I guess that's the kind of kid I was. I didn't necessarily want to be funny. I just liked the performance side. I liked having something to entertain people with, I guess.
Yeah.
But I wasn't a very funny or jokey kid. I think I just was very in the mix. My mom said I was always last to go to bed and first to wake up. Okay. I was like, that pretty much explains me. So yeah. But I think the best thing I saw recently was my parents sent me a home video, and it's a video of all 30. I have a lot of cousins. It's all 30 of us, and we're trying to take a photo. So it's a video of all of us trying to take a photo together, and they have all the kids lined up, and everyone's smiling and looking at the camera, and you've got all the aunts and uncles saying look over here, and then you hear Courtney, put your hands down. And everybody else is smiling nicely. And then the camera zooms in on me, and my hands are doing bullwinkle antler ears. And I'm sticking my tongue out, and I'm just being very silly. So it is very odd. I don't remember trying to be a ham, but I guess when I was a kid that, there was something deep inside of me that was be a ham.
Right? You were doing it, you didn't even know it.
Exactly.
So with the joke books, did you have a performer or comedian that you looked up to or that you admired?
Oh, nothing really. I think as a child, all growing up, I wanted to be a librarian. I wanted to be a sign language interpreter. And it wasn't until I got into 8th, junior high. I have no problem admitting this. My parents, we had family movie night, and they showed us the movie Speed when it came out. And I was like, Sandra Bullock is amazing. She's so cool. And then I got really into acting when I was in 8th grade. I was like, I want to be an actress, having no concept of what that would take or anything. I just was all of a sudden, forget about being a librarian. But I think from there, I started like digging away at entertainment and learning movies and getting obsessed with movies. And when I was like the oldest 14-year-old, I loved the show Mad About You.
Nice.
There's just like the natural, I like sitcoms. And because of that, Paul Reiser was the writer and he was a comedian. He did stand up. So I got really into Paul Reiser, which I was like 15-year-old girl would be like, I identify with the comedy of a 45-year-old man. But my first taste of comedy was watching like Bonnie Hunt, and then and understanding like, oh, she does comedy. Okay, I guess that's cool. I just knew that people did comedy. There was no distinction of what types it was. It was just, oh, this is a lady that does funny things.
Yeah.
And this is a guy that writes about his wife and his kid. Just, again, at 14 or 15, you're just like, I identify with this.
Right. Mad About You was a great show.
Yeah, it was always a fantastic show. I was saying the other day to my friends, it was so different for its time because most sitcoms, especially at that time and forward, were about couples where the guys just genuinely did not like their wife and they were just very rude to each other. Yes. It was the whole premise was like disrespecting your spouse or just, contempt for them. But Mad About You is just about two loving people. And I was like, this is great.
Yeah. Did you watch the reboot at all?
I sure did. Actually, Jeff Kramer is the one that told me that Mad About You is playing on Prime. And I was like, oh my gosh, all the episodes are on Prime. And then they were like, yeah, plus the new season. I was like, there's a new season?
The what?
So and I binged so much of it so quickly. And it was exactly, they have, it's such a beautiful show.
It
Fantastic.
Is. And Paul Reiser, I don't think you know this, is my new best friend. My husband, Dave Nelson, who also performs at ComedySportz, he, a couple years ago for my birthday or Christmas, I can't remember, got us tickets to see Paul Reiser do his comedy show in Milwaukee. And afterwards, Paul Reiser just like walks out into the lobby and starts talking to people. And I got my picture taken with my new best friend, Paul Reiser.
Okay, first of all, you just said two things that blew my mind. The first one is the whole Paul Reiser thing. The second is I didn't know your husband was Dave Nelson.
Yeah. Don't think less of me.
English guy. Yeah.
Yes,
blew my mind.
That's my dear, sweet, loving husband is Dave Nelson.
Oh, that kills. That's so funny. I feel like I know everybody in ComedySportz or a good amount of people. Yeah. But sometimes I find these connections and I'm like, really? I had no idea. Yeah. I look up to him for all of my grammatical needs.
Oh, yes. TheGrammarGeek.com.
Yes, it's so good. So good.
Oh, well, I'll have to tell him that you said that. He shares all of his grammar knowledge with me when I don't ask for it. That's our, sweet conversations after the children go to bed.
He's a hero. We all need that.
He is. So tell me, you were born and raised in San Jose, and then how did ComedySportz come into your world? I mean, I know you were on the San Jose team, but how did that happen?
Yeah. So it is a funny, interesting to me story. So I'm from a small town in California named Modesto. It's only about an hour and a half away from San Jose. Okay. So my city is mainly known for you either someone taught you how to apply to college and you knew how to go to college, or you just kind of learned a trade or whatever. So I was middling around in junior college or community college, $11 a unit. I was like, this is fine. And I was just going to school and I was in a theater program in the junior college, and the theater professor one day was like, you know what? I don't think you're good at this. Like, he just straight up was like, I don't think acting is for you. And I was like, what? Not that I had figured out what I was going to major in, or I didn't even know I was even going to go to a university. I just was like, yeah, you're supposed to do community college. But he was like, I don't think you understand acting. I don't think you're very good at this.
What?
And he said, his name is Todd Guy. He was a very nice person. He said,
really nice.
Yeah. He said, have you thought about improv, though? Have you ever tried improv? And I said, not really. I'm sure we did games in high school, but nothing, structured or anything. And he was like, okay. So he brought, and this is a running theme throughout my life, somebody in my circle mentored me a little bit more and brought somebody in to do a workshop. And they said, they just did like a basic improv workshop where we did pass stuff around a circle and did like warm-ups and stuff. And I was like, cool, that's fine. And then it perfectly dovetailed with, at the exact same time, San Jose had sanctioned kind of like a kid who went to my high school, was on the San Jose team, and he moved back to Modesto with his wife. He just got married. And he said, hey, he came into my junior college acting class and he said, hey, I'm with something called ComedySportz. We're starting a new improv team out here in Modesto since I'm moving back. We're going to teach people what ComedySportz is. That's the short version, is that San Jose had kind of sanctioned, why don't we have like a farm team? Like it's kind of like see what kind of talent is out in Modesto. Like it's close enough to the Bay Area where it's like, you never know. So this guy named Justin Worsham, he had this audition. I mainly went because of a boy. Because I had a crush on this guy. Yeah, I had a crush on this guy, and now he's like a pastor with like 8 kids. But
the guy you had a crush on?
Yeah. And we were in the improv. Justin cast us together. He said he cast 12 people for his first team, and they taught me improv. And he taught me ComedySportz, and I didn't know that it was like, it took a while. I was like, what's the form? There's a format. Okay. So not all improv is the same. Okay. I got that. And then, when you're playing ComedySportz for the first time, when they say things like, pick a choice round game, you're like, oh, I don't know, chain murder. And they're like, nope, that goes in a different round. You're like, okay. So they taught me ComedySportz, and it wasn't until we did our first show in Modesto, and he was like, it was this group called the Unscriptables, and we presented ComedySportz. This was back in the day before branding had really reined in. And at the time, Justin said to us, he was like, I know you guys understand what ComedySportz is, but I want you to see a show. And he took us to San Jose, and it was at the El Camino space that San Jose was in some of their final days there. And I remember watching ComedySportz for the first time performed in front of me. Mm-hmm. And I saw 5 things for the first time, and it was magic. And I had never, everything clicked. I was like, oh, that's what you're trying to teach us? Oh, okay. And then it just blew my mind. I mean, these players were so quick. They were so lively. They were so energetic. The space was, it was huge. It was off the charts, and people were so friendly. And then everything clicked, and I was like, I love this. All of a sudden I understood what the show was. I understood like, so every, all shows that do ComedySportz are like this thing. We are connected to this thing. Okay. Yeah. So, and I guess the fast track from there is, the small troupe in Modesto didn't really make it past a couple of years. I had started to do some performance work at the local theme park in the Bay Area. And while I was in the Bay Area, I got connected more with Jeff's team and was like, we're kind of an extension of your team. And I was like, maybe I could come to practice one day, or maybe I could go to a workshop or something, or do a show, and I would guest in. And then it just grew and grew for about, 5 years, to the point of where I was like, I had applied to go to college, and I was going to go to CSU Northridge and major in radio, which is like, talk about like pivotal moments. I was going to go to CSU Northridge down south and major in radio for whatever reason. And somebody said, what about the Bay Area? You already like ComedySportz. And I was like, I love ComedySportz. And at the exact intersection, San Jose decided to host the championship in 2006. Okay. And that was a huge moment for me, where I understood what we were connected to all of a sudden. And then I went, okay. So I changed my plans. I didn't respond to the Northridge application. And I applied to San Jose State University and got a degree in public relations. And the entire time I just kept doing ComedySportz. And they taught me, they taught me everything. They taught me how to teach improv. They taught me how to teach ComedySportz. They taught me, I got involved in the high school league, and I was full-fledged, like 100%. You could not tear me from that place. Yeah, it was my favorite thing on the planet. It still is.
Oh, well, what year did you start there? What you said in 2006 they did the championship, but what year did you start?
Yeah, so probably around 2004, I started bumming around and was like, hey, what's going on over here? And then it was right when I had watched them go through leaving their space at El Camino, leaving their space at Bella Mia, which was an Italian restaurant downtown. And Jeff had found this space that was an old, basically abandoned movie theater in downtown. And I remember being part of that moving crew where I would show up on a Tuesday night. I'd help move things into the space, and we gutted that place, cleaned it out. So probably around 2004. Okay. Was like, I was getting really much more involved, and was like, I think I'm going to move. I think I need to change my plans. And yeah.
Wow. And then you did finish school as a public relations major, right?
I did. I got a degree. And my dad to this day is like, you got a BA in telecommunications. I'm like, nope, I got a BS in public relations, but it's fine. It's fine.
Well, how did ComedySportz help you outside of ComedySportz, like in your job or in your day-to-day life? What are some things you learned that helped you?
Oh, okay. So this is my favorite thing to talk about. So I would say in the Bay Area, I was very lucky in that I graduated during the recession. Hang on. I graduated during the recession in 2008-ish, 2009. And the only people hiring was tech. And I had wanted to be in like sports or entertainment. I don't remember what I thought I was going to do with my degree, but I was like sports or entertainment. And tech was the only place hiring. And I somehow got connected with a fantastic woman-owned public relations agency. And they are just some of the best people I've ever met that fully understand that when an employee has separate outside interests or passions, that it just makes them that much more, unique and special and fun and much of a, a threat. So in a good way.
Yeah.
So she really cultivated, like everything about you as an improviser. If this is what you love, like, how can you help this? How can you help it shine? So it helped me work through crisis communications, working on just focusing on being in the moment and moving on when you fail. There's always that normal thing of like, we need someone to present this or we need someone to do this. Courtney, you do it. I'm like, I'm not a puppet. But I definitely, I took even something as grandiose and big as it got me really good at like taking feedback and moving on from mistakes to something, as helpful as, helping other people feel welcome in the room. But then it also extended to things like some of the same traditions and the same rituals and the same fun that ComedySportz had taught me to inject into everything that we did. Mm-hmm. It gave me a tool set. So when I would walk into anything I did with this company, with this agency, when we would hold like, annual kickoffs or things, I would be like, we can make this more fun. And just little things of like, things don't have to be the way they've always been. We can make them a little bit more fun. So, that's kind of the broad version of how it impacted the rest of my life, but with my career in public relations. But, it just taught me to keep taking chances and saying yes to stuff. So that's how I eventually left being at an agency, because working at an agency is for a person with energy. And I was an intern when I was 27. So I was like, I'm getting older. This is a lot of work So from there, I decided, I'm going to go work in startups. I'm going to go work in small companies. So I started working in startups. And because of working in startups was how I started to learn how businesses are run and what leadership is doing and how all of the pieces connect, right? So like, how does biz dev, how does that work with like the marketing team? How does the sales team work together with the engineering team? And I got to see everything from like it was a really good vantage point. I got to see how companies were formed and how leadership was or wasn't working. Mm-hmm. And that's, I guess, the easiest way to that's the platform that gave me the audacity to own a ComedySportz or to branch out and think about owning a business.
Well, yeah. So when you were learning about that, is that why you decided you wanted to start your own? And how did you make your way across the country to Boston?
Yeah, it's funny. The Alex Grindelin of Milwaukee, of Seattle.
Right.
Alex, I remember probably around 2009, I met Alex for the first time. And we were fast friends immediately. And he said, he had this little secret. He was like, guess what? I'm going to open CSz Seattle. I applied for the license. And I was like, oh, did you? And I remember thinking, gosh darn it, that was the last cool city I would have opened up a ComedySportz in. Like, that was the last cool city I could have thought that was like, when you're young. I was like, yeah, Seattle's so cool. It still is. But I remember thinking, well, I guess I guess there's no other ComedySportz city I'd open in. So I kind of just put it down and was like, I'll just stay in San Jose. I like it here. Yeah. I love it here. I loved my life in San Francisco. I loved living there. I loved everything I created in the Bay Area. But I think the situation was that Boston had opened in 2013. I knew they existed. I had met some people on the team, and it was kind of the current owner at the time. It wasn't what he expected. It wasn't what he wanted. It wasn't growing the way he thought it should grow. It just wasn't there. He also was not a performer. So it was just it's different when it's just somebody that has money and owns something.
Yeah.
Whereas I had grown up in it, I had done every single, other than owning it, I had done every single role. So I looked at that team and I was like, interesting. And he had put the word out, like, I'm looking around if anybody wants to maybe buy it or partner. Right. And I was like, I don't want to partner. I was like, I want to own my own thing. But I think that this is the hardest part. I don't think I ever really had it in me to think I would start a brand new ComedySportz. I think I watched what Alex navigated and I was like, that's a lot of work. But what struck me was when this person, the owner of Boston in 2014 or so, 2015, was like, I think I might just shut it down. My brain was like, I had such a positive experience and it changed everything about my life. It changed how I walked through the world, and it just broke my heart thinking a team would just kind of dissipate. Right. I was like, that doesn't seem right. Yeah. That doesn't seem fair. It just, I don't know. It just really nagged at me, and I couldn't put it down, and I just kept thinking about it and was like, I don't know if I want to start a brand new thing, but I love I wouldn't say saving the day, but I was like, I love fixing stuff. Yeah. I can work with what's there. I can turn anything. I'm a PR person. My job is to make things look better. I was like, I can turn things around. I can help. I love what I learned. And I learned so much on Jeff's team. And I just have so much respect for the growth and the platform that he gave so many of us to be strong and competent and bold leaders. I was just like, I got to a point where I was like, I do not want to leave, but I cannot stay. Okay. It just was so apparent to me. It was such a big pull. So we made a couple of offers to the manager and he kept turning them down. And we got to the point where he finally just went, you know what? Okay. And he handed over the keys and we handed over some cash and that was that. I mean, there's an intestinal surgery story in the middle that helped with that decision, but overall,
for him or for you?
Yeah, no, for me, I probably didn't know you at this time, but the situation was, we had made a couple of offers to the manager of Boston and he kept turning them down. And I was like, okay, I didn't really think too hard about it. And I was like, well, he said no, they said no. So I kind of put it down and was like, I sure did try my hardest. Yeah. And at that exact same time, I was at the Quad Cities Championship in 2015. We were in Iowa for the World Championship. And during a run with a couple of other comedy sportsers, it was like Renee DeKesnoy, Hadass, it was a lot of friends, Andrew Bergowitz. We were all running and I tripped and fell. Okay. And because I'm me, and I fell so hard when I was running. I fell so hard that I flipped my cecum. So like the cecum so it's a small pouch at the end of your intestines. Oh. And I fell so hard that I flipped a part of my intestines over. So it's like a hose, like a garden hose, and it kinked. And I was like, oh, okay, so I blocked my intestines. Oh my God. So it was, I know, right? It was later that day and I got up and I was like, oh, that sucked. I got up, made it through the run. It was at the end of the night, the closing night party. We were all in prom dresses and I was outside of the theater and we were waiting to do the big party at the end of the week. And I was like, had this huge stomach pain and I was like, I don't feel good. And I remember I looked at I think it was like Ben Gartner from Minneapolis. He was near me and he was like, you okay? He kind of saw me double over and I was like, I don't feel good. And I remember just sitting in the theater going, something is wrong. And it took every person imaginable in that area to start helping and diagnosing and figuring it out to the point of where finally they just threw me in a car, got me the emergency room. That showed up, with 3 women with prom dresses and no shoes show up to an emergency room. And this doctor's like, what's going on? And after a couple of tests and everything, they were like, well, it's a 1 in 7 million chance, but you flip your intestines. Oh my God. And I was like, yeah. So I had an emergency cecum surgery in Iowa. I was there for 2 weeks and everybody from ComedySportz. This was a huge part of it was not only did, everybody in ComedySportz rally together to support me, whether it was staying with me in the hospital overnight or helping me book flights back, or Quad Cities generously took care of my hotel stay while I was trying to figure out how to get back to the Bay Area. My team back home pulled together. Renee DeKesnoy put together a crowd fund to help me pay medical bills while I was out of work. A lot of stuff and a lot of help and support and kindness and generosity went into helping me get through one of the scariest things I've ever been involved in, which is just like, I don't feel good. Yeah, right. And then I came home. I was maybe out of the hospital for 3 weeks. And then because of my first surgery, it caused a second emergency surgery, which was, your intestines are blocked again because of your first surgery. Oh my God. So I passed out. Yeah. So I passed out my apartment and it was Hiller Sternberg from my team. He happened to, I put him in there. He lived in my building at my apartment in San Francisco and he had a key to my apartment. So my best friend called him and was like, please go check on Courtney. I haven't heard from her. He took me to the emergency room. I had a second surgery. This entire time, I found all this time to sit in the hospital and go through surgeries and think. And I was just sitting there going, like, okay, when this is all over, what do you want to come back to? What do you want to do? And it was like the combination of the tremendous amount of support I saw from the ComedySportz family and keeping my own family sane back in California, just like, she's going to be okay. Right. And taking care of me, along with the intersection of, are you really going to take no as an answer for this thing that you think you want to pursue? And I was like, I doubled down. So I just like, I'm going to go back. I'm going to try harder for this license. I'm going to put another offer in. I'm going to work with this guy. We're going to figure it out. So that's the very short version of how that happened, which was, I got told no a few times and then I went back and was like, no, this is a huge sign. I mean, talk about signs. This is a huge sign. Like there's no question why I would not surround the rest of my life with pushing this mission forward, helping other people discover it. You know, I've met some of my closest friends doing comedy sports, and it's like, I want to provide those locations and those environments. And, you know, and my dream is like, I want a theater where families and kids and players and their families are running around and meeting their best friends for the first time. And it's like, yeah, there is just no other, I couldn't think of anything else other than like, it's clearly staring you in the face. You need to pursue this.
Well, had you been to Boston before?
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. In fact, yeah, no, I had never been. I was like, I'm sure it's fine. It seemed comparable to San Francisco and Seattle. And I was like, it's a smaller environment. It's not a huge, huge city, but it's, you know, got some clout. I'm pretty confident. I was like, I'll make friends wherever I go. I'll be fine. You know, there definitely wasn't, I worked in health tech at the time, which was booming. And I remember my friends telling me, I was like, I don't know if I should leave. I've got like a really good job and like I make good money and I live in San Francisco. And they were like, well, the tech industry, the health tech industry is always going to be here. So if you want to come back, you can come back. So I was like, might as well take a chance. Maybe that's just kind of, it seems like a pretty running theme throughout my life, which is me just going, it's probably going to be okay.
That's great. Do you think you have that attitude in your life for most things? I
think so. Especially this past year and a half, when plans are changing every 6 weeks, I've gotten really good at going, it's fine. It'll sort itself out, or it won't, and it'll still be fine.
It'll still be fine.
Yeah. I really do think, I'm sure I would have had a nice life if I would have stayed in San Francisco. I'm sure I would have had a nice little life. I would have enjoyed my career. I would have tried new things. I would have met great people. I would have met a partner. I'm sure I would have done all cool things. And I was like, I also really, 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 really like what I'm doing out here and what I've discovered.
Okay. Now, how is the Boston team different than the San Jose team?
Oh, man, this came up the other day. So here's the best example. Last night we had our team practice and I did not teach. Usually I teach because I'm our artistic director as well. But I had one of our teammates taught a new game and did like a full rhyming workshop.
Okay.
And I just got to be a student and I found myself like messing around a lot, just like not messing around. Like I did the practice, I fully committed, fully engaged, but I find myself doing these like little like asides and bits and it was hard to focus, but also it just felt nice to just be silly. Mm-hmm. And that's for better or for best. That's a lot of what I remember what it was like being on the San Jose team. It was a very jovial, fun atmosphere. Mm-hmm. And it was very lively. And I really, you know, as much as I could get really impatient about it because I was, you know, very like, everything has to be on a schedule. I inherited that part of the San Jose team, which is just silly and fun. And I wouldn't say that that's what makes Boston and San Jose different, because I think the Boston team is very silly and fun. And I think the biggest differences are I was a lot more, San Jose just felt very silly and free in San Jose. Okay. And in Boston, I feel a certain type of, obviously, responsibility.
Well, sure.
Maybe biggest differences are Boston loves to lean into music.
Okay.
They love musical improv, and I am terrible at it. I like it, but I'm not your favorite gal. Like whenever people tell me they want to do musical improv, I'm like, we'll do it. I'll say yes to your idea, but I'm telling you now, I'm not going to be a fan favorite. And this is not going to be the best thing you've ever seen, but I will try my very hardest. So I've always really appreciated the energy and the passion that Boston has had for things like trying new things like music and trying daring things. But also really at the same time, when I watch my team, when we do practice, mm-hmm. I watch our team, like they want to pick a game apart because it's a science in some ways. They want to pick it apart and they want to talk game theory and they want to get deep into it. I was like, yes, let's do that. So I guess, yeah, those are big differences.
Do you go back to San Jose ever and play?
Mm-hmm. Probably too much, which is like maybe once a year. But yeah, I think Boston was still, while we're still getting started, we didn't really have anything set up for New Year's. And we were not at a point yet where we could support doing a New Year's Eve show just because our players are, we have a smaller team. Mm-hmm. And I would go back and do San Jose New Year's, which was some of my favorite events. In the past few years I did. And every year I'm like, this is probably my last one. Mm-hmm. But I think the biggest thing has been being able to, as long as I've been growing my roots and my time here in Boston, the times I have been able to go home to California or go back to San Jose and see San Jose people, to be able to take them to San Jose ComedySportz. So being able to fuse the two together and say to my Boston life was like, I really want to show you this important part of my life and show you these people. And I want you to meet like everything like that this place is, you know, and it's not necessarily just the bricks. It's just, you know, everything about that location and how it raised me and taught me, you know, really great things. And I've had some of my best and worst moments in that theater. I'm like, it's good memories, but I definitely like, I find myself more and more going, man, I can't wait to build more stuff in Boston that looks different, that is, you know, equally as fun, if not more. Just, I get to build more stuff. That's great.
Yeah, for sure. Can you share some of the things you'd like to do or try there?
Oh, yeah. Okay, so one thing, this is ComedySportz adjacent, which I think should probably be my nickname, really. I want to have an annual pun competition. So I guess quick backstory is that we are located in an area of Boston. We are in Boston, but we are in more of a neighborhoody Boston. We're not connected to the main transit line.
Okay.
So it tends to be like if you live here, you love it. It's a very old school Boston neighborhood. So it very much is its own thing. So the reason we're out here is because most improv in Boston is in Cambridge, which is where Harvard is, or it's near, like, it's the touristy ends of Boston. So when people are out seeing a show, they're going to go to those areas, which means that areas like this area, like Rosendale and Jamaica Plain, all these other neighborhoods don't necessarily they're not considered a destination for this kind of stuff. And I was like, okay, well, if you only keep putting improv in these same areas with the same types of people, you're going to keep getting the same types of people as your audience, as your performance, or as your talent, as your everything. So the only way we can help make the craft more diverse with different voices and different people in them is if we choose to be somewhere else and choose to do the hard work to grow it. So we're in this little tiny neighborhood and we're constantly, we're offering free classes and things, free drop-in things to help educate people on here's what this is, here's what it looks like, here's what it could be. What do you think? And slowly growing our footprint out here so that people who would otherwise normally never get to do this stuff would be able to do it at our theater. So the reason why I want to do things like a pun competition, like an annual thing for the neighborhood is like, it'd be really fun to have that as like our neighborhood thing. But also like, I want to have a pun competition. I think it'd be great. That stuff I love. I really love storytelling. So I look forward to maybe having a storytelling night at the theater. But I think the big stuff is I want to do our level 1 classes right now are just enough to where we have a solid full class. That's great. What I would love to do is I would love to have 2 tracks at our theater where one track is if you want to do improv for performance and comedy, come over here. Yeah. If you want to do improv as like an applied, if you want to use it for life skills, as in like you want to use it to be a better communicator, a better public speaker, we have a track for you. And then it's a full training center where people can choose their 2. My biggest thing that I love is I love making improv feel accessible to people. I think my biggest fears are when people say, I don't want to try improv, or I tried improv, but somebody made me feel like I had to perform or like I wasn't creative enough. And I'm like, that's the coach's fault. You were like, it's my favorite, I love, like, I can meet you where you're at. These skills could be for everybody. Like anybody can benefit from this stuff. You don't have to want to perform. So big dreams that I have are like, I would love to have an opportunity out here in Rosendale and outward and forward to create an opportunity where people can come here to just learn the skills. You don't have to perform if you don't want to. Okay.
And you also do teach applied improv, right?
Absolutely. Love it. My favorite thing.
Your favorite thing. You've worked for, so for our listeners that don't know, companies will call ComedySportz and say, hey, we'd like workshops for like team building workshops for our company, right? Mm-hmm. And you've done a lot of those out in Boston?
Yeah, I would say that's a main staple. And it helps with, the area that we are in, San Jose is a very similar area in that it's a lot of companies, a lot of tech is we'll choose to root out here. We're big in healthcare out here, education. So companies are looking for professional development as well as entertainment, and we have our show. So those are our 2 big things. Whereas if you were in other areas, I would say some cities that come to mind is I know Buffalo talks about how their high school league is growing and they love it and it's fun. It's hard to start a high school league out here for Boston. Okay. And so their big things are their show and their high school league, where I know our 2 big things are applied improv for companies and our show. So good cocktail.
And you have your own theater space in Boston?
We do. I'm sitting in it right now. And you will appreciate this as much as anybody, is that it went a year and a half we have the best landlords. We went a year and a half with things being, shuttered, shut down.
Right.
And it wasn't until I invited the players back for practice. And I was like, all right, everybody, we're going to have our first practice back. And I get everything fired up and 3 light bulbs were burned out. And I was like, what? You made it through a year and a half. A year and a half. And then everything was just like, we've decided to stop working.
Yeah, right.
But yeah, we have a little 1050 square foot place that used to be a karate studio. And we, everything in this space that we have was built by the performers. It was built by people on our team. They built the raised sound booth. They built the stage. They built everything you see here. The monitor that sits above the box office that shows you the prices and graphics, that's my TV for my home that I sacrificed for the theater.
Nice.
So yeah, it is you walk in and sometimes people go, oh, it's cute. Or some people go, I didn't know this was here. But more often than not, if you spent time in the theater, people go, you guys have done good work. I'm like, thank you. It's our first theater. So it's kind of cool.
That's wonderful. Now, from San Jose to Boston, performing in those 2 cities, have you performed in other cities for ComedySportz?
Oh, yeah. I think, I don't have a running list like some other folks do. Like, I don't have a bucket list of them. I just know I've definitely been in like Chicago, Minneapolis. We've gone to Provo, Iowa. Yeah. Good amount. Portland was where I went to have a vacation when I needed a break from San Jose, which is ridiculous because I'd be like, I'm going to take a break from ComedySportz. I'm going to go to Portland and play ComedySportz. I was like, I don't even need a break from the team. I would just be like, I'm going to go on vacation. In fact, I'm sure Jeff laughs about it if he even remembers, but my very first spring break when I was in college, I had a spring break coming up and me and 2 other ComedySportz players decided we wanted to go see ComedySportz Provo. So we drove from San Jose to Provo, Utah on our spring break in a broke van. And we went and played ComedySportz, another ComedySportz. And I was like, yeah, that's what my brain said. My brain was like, would you like a vacation? Can I interest you in ComedySportz in a different setting?
So this is just in you. This is you. This is your thing.
I think so. If we were going to boil it down to one sentence, I'm sure I've said this to the players before, is I like improv. I love ComedySportz. I love the brand. I love the people. I love what the show does for people. I love the reactions. Like when San Jose hosted the championship, there was this one moment that you don't see in other improv shows, which is when San Jose finally won the championship. They won the whole thing. There was a family in the front rows of the whole theater. It was like a 500-seat theater. There's a family in the front row, and they stood up and were cheering and hugging and crying because their home team had won. Oh. And I mean, for everything we know, it's a performance. We understand the competition aspect, but when it comes to when are you going to see that in any other improv show? ComedySportz brings this hugely celebratory, excited. This show was for them. That's the best part. So I like improv and I love ComedySportz.
Oh, that's so wonderful. And it's just such a great family to be a part of.
It is. It really is.
What's your favorite game when you're playing?
Okay, nobody ever lets me play this. It's this game called Death Pendulum. Okay. I mean, I like every game. I can tell you, I'm easier to tell you that here are the games I don't like. I do not like playing Emotional Symphony, and I will never stop talking about that. But I will say I like every game. But there's one game called Death Pendulum. Have you heard of this game?
I don't know that I have. Explain it, please.
Yeah, so you get 3 locations.
Okay.
So maybe a bathroom, a Starbucks, and a gas station. And just like a pendulum, you rotate through the scenes. So you'll come back to the scenes and you'll have moved forward in time. But every time you go through the scene, the characters are still there. Every time you go through the scene, somebody has to die. So every time you run, you come back to the scene, that the audience knows somebody is going to die in that scene. So you get to have this fun game where you set up these elaborate ways to die in the scene, but then you die in this really ridiculous way of you go to turn on a light bulb while you're sitting in a bathtub and it turns out that you saw your reflection in the mirror and you thought you were so ugly that you just passed out right there. It's just a fun, it's very game within a game. It's we'll play the game of Death Pendulum, but the other game is what are the dumbest ways we can find out to die in this game?
That makes me think of the old Batman show with, like Penguin would come on. Instead of just shooting Batman and Robin, he'd like set up some elaborate scheme to get them to die by some slow dripping oil on a string. And it just is ridiculous.
Yes. It is very, to me, even though we don't play it too much and it doesn't come up too often in like a championship show or anything, it is a very silly game. When I first moved here, I definitely met a lot of people that were like, oh, you guys do this like, short form improv, and they kind of had their nose up at stuff. And people would say things like, oh, you guys need gimmicks for your games. I'm like, do you know how much has to happen in order to pull these games off? You've got to know scene work. You've got to know narrative. You've got to know game work. You've got to have a game brain. You've got to understand how to fulfill the audience's expectations. But like Death Pendulum, it is so, same thing with Five Things. It is so silly. And I have no problem. With silly, because at the end of the day, when people leave and they say, I just laughed so much, and I just go, good, that's great. That's the point. You should be laughing. That's the best thing you could hear.
Yes.
So I just kind of think like, if it's silly, it's okay to be silly. That's fun. I like it.
Oh, that's wonderful. It feels good to be silly and to make people laugh.
It does. And I in San Jose, we did all kinds of improv. We always did ComedySportz, and we always had like long form shows going at other, we'd always done Harold's and Armando's and all this stuff. And I liked it just fine. And also the fulfillment that I get from the way ComedySportz makes people laugh consistently, without there, because no form is better than the other. It's all the same stuff. They're all just tools. But I will tell you, I hear more often than not, when people talk about long form, when they talk about their shows, I will hear people say things like, the audience didn't really like it, but we thought it was fun. And I was like, it's not for me. I don't want to do a show for myself. I'm not interested in watching people do a show for just themselves.
Right.
I really like when everybody's in on the joke. And I was like, I'm not interested in being a performer who is smarter than the audience. I was like, I want us to all do it together. This should be fun for everybody. No one should feel left out.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. You have such a positive attitude. I love it. I love it. No, it's contagious. It's wonderful. I wish I was a more positive person. I just love how you're talking about things and how you view things, and you just picked up and moved across the country, never having been there. I just think that's amazing.
Well, thanks. I would say, I won't get too hokey, but yeah, gratitude is a huge part of ComedySportz values. It's like when it comes to living the values, it's like gratitude means you believe you can always learn something. And I mean, I have so much to be grateful for. Like, again, as many people on this podcast have said, it just completely changed the trajectory of my life. I don't know what I would have been doing. I'm sure it would have been fine. But the unexpected like gifts that I have learned from there's so much tied to, which we don't even have to get into it, but there's so much tied to when, moving out to Boston helped me uncover more of my identity as an Asian American. It helped me identify a lot more things that I was involved in or that I wanted to be more involved in. It just helped me be more bold and be more excited about what's possible. And I think that's like, what is better than that?
That's wonderful. Well, and I do a little stalking research on my guests, that you do volunteer work that focuses on empowering people of color and women of color. Is that?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So what do you do for volunteer work that focuses on that?
Yeah. So a lot of the work what I end up doing is conference stuff. So conferences that are focused on lifting up women, lifting up women and girls, helping them understand more about entrepreneurship, or even just, especially with Asian American women, there's just like a very specific thing that exists from everything we know about feeling like you're the model minority or that you're ignored. There's a lot of stuff there. I was like, well, I mean, there's, improv is for a long time has been dominated by it's mainly a white and white male space. And to be an Asian American in the space is so different for me. It's funny, I just never thought about it. But as I've gotten older, I've gone, oh, okay. So no one looks like me on stage. So how are kids going to know that they can do this stuff?
Yeah.
So I think one thing that's helped me is that if nobody looks like me is doing this stuff, then that means that group doesn't think that these skills are for them. So in other words, if I made it really simple, if people who are white, who work at white companies, predominantly white companies, they look at improv and it's mostly white people, and then they hire those people, and then it's that these they naturally will think like these skills are for us. This is something cool we can do for our company. But if you're a predominantly white improv company and there's maybe more of a predominantly Asian company and they're looking for professional development, they're not naturally going to think improv is for us, which means they're losing out on some really fantastic opportunities of different ways to communicate, of different ways to learn, of different ways to support each other and act like a team, just different tools. So the idea of myself being able to go in a lot more places and bring these skills to people. So in a lot of the Asian groups that I'm involved in, like business groups and entrepreneur groups, I'm the only one that does what I do. But I've served as like, hopefully what I hope is a beacon or made something accessible that never seemed accessible before. So that's huge for me. Is I do a lot of work with like Northeastern University, where they have their graduate leadership program. And there's a lot of folks in there that are not their first generation, either going to college or English is not their first language. And we spend a lot more time working on the skill of moving on from failure, which if you're doing an average, quote unquote, average improv class with people from, a corporate setting, we'll run through, the top 5 or 6 skills of like, saying yes and being excited about when you do things so that, your energy comes across. But with certain groups, being able to understand their lived experience and know what they're managing, that how it's very different than what the other person next to them is managing. And that means it was like, oh, I have an immense amount of, like, I can do so much, I can have so much impact because I can speak to their needs. I can know more about their experience. So that gets me excited. So any opportunity to dig into bringing the skills to underrepresented groups or people that don't necessarily see themselves, I'm like, that's interesting to me. That feels valuable and worthwhile and impactful.
That's wonderful. And you said you never really thought about it for yourself personally. So you never let anything stop you becoming a member of an improv troupe and then starting your own troupe across the country. I think that's wonderful.
Thanks.
Yeah, I think it's great. And there's one other thing I wanted to ask you about. You were recognized as a Boston Business Journal 40 under 40 honoree. What is that?
Yes. It's when you're almost 40. And
I'm way past that.
So this cracks me up because when I was in public relations for all these fancy high-tech companies, I would pitch my clients for these awards. I would say, hey, you might want to consider my CEO or consider my whatever. And to be in the same publications that I used to pitch is wild to me. It's like, you want to talk to me? Because I'm just so used to like the PR person's in the background. So I think this is huge, is when we talk about like how we talk about this in improv, every single person on a team brings value. Exactly who you are is why this is great. We need you. So not every comedy sports manager, not every business owner is going to be the same. I'll just stick with comedy sports. So you have comedy sports owners that have theater backgrounds, that have engineering backgrounds. My public relations background means that when the pandemic hit, when we closed our doors and we weren't doing any shows, we had no revenue coming in from tickets, that I still managed to stay in top of mind because I have a background in getting press. So I put my foot down and was like, okay, we're going to dig into where else can I be more visible, even if we're not physically doing shows. So just getting more earned media. And that's a language that I speak very fluently. So I started, figuring out where else could I like co-write blogs or pop in and be a guest or be a panelist or lead a panel. But the 40 under 40 thing came because my Asian American entrepreneur group, it's called ACE. They had mentioned like, hey, the openings are to apply for this award. The application process is open now if you want to submit. And I thought about it and was like, and again, I'm just so used to being like, me, I haven't done much. Like I haven't done enough. And which again, women are socialized to just second guess themselves and just believe that it's never enough. And I was like, and then one of my friends and mentors sat me down and was like, she just listed off a whole thing. She's like, look at everything you've done. And I was like, but like, is it enough? Because these awards are for people that like make millions of dollars with their company. And she was like, I want you to sit down and just like really total up. What have you given your time to? What have you contributed to? So I sat down and wrote out and I was like, I guess I've donated to we've done a lot of this stuff in the community. And when I sat down and looked at it, I was like, okay, I'll submit. And in order to submit and apply for these awards, which is the 40 under 40, you have to get recommendations from other people in your circle. Okay. So it involved pulling in people from leadership and pulling people from different organizations to vouch for me and say, I know this woman, she does good work. And they all took their time to like craft a nomination. And I was like, really? For me? Again, me? Are you sure? And it worked out where they were like, well, congratulations, you get one. And I was like, really? So I don't know. I'm just so used to being the PR person behind the scenes that I'm like, really? Me? But I'm getting better at going, oh yeah, me.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you're right. Women are socialized to not, have that confidence and things are changing, but I think it's important that we pat ourselves on the back for the things that we do well, and it's okay to say it.
Yeah, and there's a huge difference between there's cocky and there's arrogant, and then there's confident and proud. And I'm so proud of our team. I'm proud of the work we've done. And I'm also like, I recognize that I took a very different path. I mean, I just talked about this recently with Matt Elwell. I was like, when I first moved here, I thought it was going to be a very specific type of journey. And I was like, yeah, I'll be with all the other improvisers. I'll be with all the other improv companies and I'll do this thing. And then I got here and I was sorely mistaken. And people told me, some people didn't say the nicest things to me. And they kind of were like, you guys don't really get a crowd. You're not going to, I don't know how you're going to get much bigger than what you are. And I was like, okay. And I think I changed paths and I was like, I'm not here to try and be the best of my competitors. I'm going to go start something where nothing exists. In other words, I will be the one to build it from the ground up. And when we look back in 30 years, we'll know that we were part of a foundation that built something so big in an area that had nothing. And that appeals to me. So I think about like, what am I doing here? What am I, what's the long game? It's like, I want to build something here that outlasts me for forever. Like I want people to carry it on. If you're doing it right, that's what I believe. If you're doing it right, you should be building more leaders. It should be producing more leaders and people that feel so empowered to go do this stuff. So my hope is, keep leaving, hopefully, doing things with impact and we'll have a legacy to look back on.
You are inspirational.
Oh, I had a lot of fiber today. Is that how you have to help me? That's perfect.
No, you are. You are so inspiring. Like just the way you look at things. I'm just in awe of you. I'm really glad you were able to take some time today to talk.
Oh, thank you. Well, again, I'll give myself the credit where it's due, but I will say it's true. Like ComedySportz completely changed my life, my trajectory, but being a part of the San Jose team is what raised me and like instilled in me is like, how do you want to bring this to other people? So I'm not going to take full credit for everything. I'm going to say if I'm inspiring, it's because, everybody I surrounded myself with in ComedySportz has been a huge part of that journey. So I'm here because of that stupid fall in 2015. So I'm like, yeah, sounds like it was a team effort.
Well, ComedySportz is lucky to have you as part of our family. Tell me,
thank you so much.
You're welcome. Did you get your nickname Donkey, Courtney Donkey Pong, from San Jose? How did that come about?
I got that from Boston. So I used to have, my original name was like Shook Me All Night Pong. And then it was like, Let Me See That Pong, which is a reference to that terrible song. And then Donkey Pong was just, I got to a point where, okay, this is so ridiculous. So before every show, we have like a dry erase board, like a little clipboard, and you write on it the names of the players for the night. Okay. That's part of the prep. Part of the prep is somebody has to write the names on the board with a dry erase marker, and the dry erase marker is too thick for the paper because the paper is small. So it's like, you got to write small. So I was like, when I first moved to Boston, we were, trying to get our act together, and it was a tough struggle to get all of the moving parts ready to go to open the house for the staff or for the audience. So it got to a point where I was like, I'm not going to tell them that my nickname is this long name. So I just changed it to Donkey because it was easier and faster to write. And it made sense because it's like Donkey Kong. Because people like to play on my last name. So I was like, yeah, it's Donkey. It's just faster to write and it's easier to write rather than making somebody laboriously write out Shook Me All Night Pong. So that is this tragic story of why my nickname is what it is. But you know what? I don't mind it. I like it just fine.
Well, it's a very considerate way of shortening your name for others.
It's so considerate how you bend over backwards to please other people. No, but it really was. It was born out of convenience. It was just like, oh, this is more efficient and effective. Okay.
Okay, done. Well, before we go, I want to play a round of Would You Rather, as I like to play with my guests here. And I'm going to have you pick a category today. Either pain, fear, or discomfort.
What?
Appearance and embarrassment, food ingestion, or random. Pick a category.
Oh, we just talked about fiber, so food ingestion.
There you go, food ingestion. Let's see. Yes. Would you rather eat a piece of coal or 5 boxes of matches?
5 of them. A piece of coal.
A piece of coal.
One and done. Yeah.
It's just over with then?
Well, what if I eat the matches and then I do that thing where like you move around or whatever, and what if they like light on fire? I don't want that.
Yeah, light on fire in your gut. That would be no good. How about this one? Would you rather right before going on a roller coaster, chug 2 gallons of milk, or eat a pound of cooked pork that's 50% fat?
I would do the milk thing. Because it would be so funny. It wouldn't matter how tragic it was. It would be so funny. In retrospect, it would be really funny to see what happens. Because I'm lactose intolerant, and it would be delightful.
Not for the people around you. Oh, man. All right, one last one, because I need to know this about you. Would you rather have to live 1 year of your life as an elf or as a mermaid?
Get to, I think it's better than instead of have to. I would choose mermaid.
Yeah.
I would choose mermaid. One of my favorite places in the world is Monterey Bay. Okay. And the aquarium in San Francisco as well. And I could just sit there for hours and look at the fish. So I think I would choose mermaid. So I could be like, what kind of fish are you?
Look at me. I'm a mermaid.
Yeah, exactly. Look at me and look at my tail.
And then you could start an improv troupe underwater.
Exactly.
That
Weren't we already, though? Just kidding. We're coming out of it.
Oh, my gosh. Well, it was wonderful talking to you, Courtney. I appreciate you taking the time. And I hope your positive attitude continues throughout your life, because you are just a joy to talk to. I really like listening to your perspective on things.
Well, thank you so much. Made my day. Thank you.
Well, you're welcome so much. Thank you, Miss Courtney Donkey Pong. The ComedySportz Podcast is produced and engineered by Kyle Hanneken. Our announcer is PJ Rockwell. Like us on Facebook and follow us on Instagram. Send us your favorite Would You Rather question at the ComedySportsPodcast@gmail.com. As always, I'm Christine Rollo Capriolo. Catch you next time.
The ComedySportz Podcast is an independent production made by CSz players. The views and opinions expressed by the podcast host and any guests are their own and do not represent the views and opinions of any CSz location or CSz Worldwide. Vocabulary used by the host and guests is not necessarily representative of the CSz brand.